Welcome to Caffeinated. Welcome back, friends. Charlie William Parks with you. As usual, not always with me is Dr. Christle Guevarra. I'm trying not to butcher her last name because us Americans can't say anything correctly. You've seen her before on RP, Renaissance Periodization. She's a very big part of that team. She's going to be the director of RP University coming out in 2025, which I'm excited to talk about. Full disclosure, I'm an RP ambassador. I love their products and their content. I think it's really, really dope. She is a family medical physician and a doctor of osteopathic medicine. Also very cool. She's a team physician for U.S. figure skating, which, despite what you may think of me, I have not done figure skating. Very bad hockey player. I can ice skate poorly, but can't figure skate yet. I'm not too old. And now, because we're both on the gram together, we follow each other. You do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I do.
Which is super cool with Dr. Mike and all that stuff. I am waiting for the interview when you surpass him and it leaks and you just throw him across the room. And now he's got to explain how, my wife kicks my butt too, so it's all good.
If I could overhead press 220 pounds and throw it across the room, that would be amazing. I would love that.
But isn't it like Aikido? Isn't it kind of leverage too?
There are certain leverages. Between his size, but also he has a very unique shaped anatomy, and being 4'11", I feel like the odds are I'm not going to say it's a 0% chance, but I feel like the odds are really stacked against me.
So you're saying there's a chance. Well,
0.0001% chance.
0.00. Well, Dr. Christle, first off, thank you so much for being on the show, coming to speak with me here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Dude, it's awesome.
It was my pleasure. Are you kidding me? It's just a fun day in the office. First off, what are you up to lately? What's new and exciting? What's going on?
The YouTube channel is always up and running 5 days a week. I also do the back end work for the department. So just kind of coordinating guests to come on the show, making sure stats, communicating with the marketing team, for promotions and sales, making sure that, everything's just running smoothly. So if anybody needs anything outside of the YouTube department, kind of comes through me. So just the, handle all problems. So Scott and Mike can focus on just filming and making awesome content.
I need to find that job ad to put out there, handles all problems and make sure things run smoothly, and then find that person to work on my show too. Cause that's a pretty awesome, you're underpaid. That's awesome.
Making sure everybody's, working together. And then you had mentioned, RP University is coming out in 2025. So
that was the next question, please.
Really working on that. Just kind of making sure the back end's running smoothly, making sure that we do have some beta testers who are kind of in the platform, making sure that all the kinks are kind of, smoothed out before we roll that product out to the public. So I never want to rush anything. So right now I'm kind of just making sure that all of our ducks are in order before we launch that out.
Well, I'm volunteering myself.
Yay!
If you want a fake doctor, I can totally help. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's going to entail? Just the RP University, what it will be like?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things. So there's going to be a bunch of courses. Right now, it's courses from Dr. Mike. So on diet, training, and recovery. We're hoping to have more courses roll out onto the platform, as soon as the public launch, happens. And so we also have a community that's included with all of that. So, if people aren't interested in courses, they have this community where people can ask questions. We have live Q&As with currently, Nick Shaw, Dr. Mike, Jared Feather, myself in there, but also a way for people to continue to ask questions if they have questions about the course, if they want to do, questions about their technique, because I know that was a big thing with the Facebook groups. We're trying to kind of move away from Facebook and onto a bit of a platform that's a bit different, a little bit more user friendly, because I know a lot of people aren't a huge fan of Facebook for various reasons.
Yeah. So. Well, that sounds amazingly cool. I'm really excited to see what this thing turns out to be like, and I'm sure I'll be on there and on the boards and all that stuff.
Yeah.
How, the medical training, the MD training, how does that influence the work you do in RP? Obviously, it's going to really support the foundation in science, but how do you feel that has an effect?
Oh, that's actually a really great question. Oh. I think it has in a lot of different ways. My training as a primary care doctor has really kind of helped me thrive. So as a family medicine doctor, you know a little bit about everything. And I think the biggest part is knowing where your scope of expertise ends and where a specialist, scope of expertise lies. I was always the type of physician in medical training where I had really great relationships with all of my specialists. Like, as a resident, I reached out to, the cardiologist, like, hey, I'm a primary care doctor. Here's the workup that I did already for this patient. I'm referring this person to you because I did X, Y, and Z, and here's my clinical question I have for you. Can you help me do this? And then, here's, like a stack of paperwork of like all the information leading up to why I'm sending somebody to a specialist. And so being that type of person, one, I don't want to heavily rely on people. Like, I want to do a good job myself and kind of make that as seamless as possible for the specialist. So as a manager coming into kind of RP and sort of figuring out where, what kind of role I could, potentially play, it sort of seemed like I kind of had that same approach with projects. Like, yes, I want to do as many things as I can myself, but when I'm reaching out to the engineers or when I'm reaching out to marketing, like, I have very specific questions of like, This is what I want and what I need. Can you help me? And if not, who do I have to ask? Or if am I asking the wrong questions? That kind of like decision making kind of tree of like, being able to articulate your needs and wants and being able to problem solve are two really big things that kind of I took from medicine and kind of, were able to transfer onto this, non-medical world that I ended up in, because I ended up in marketing. I actually, as soon as I was done with my fellowship, I actually was pretty burnt out with medicine, to be honest. It was in the height of the COVID pandemic.
Ooh, yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. This was kind of a really awful experience. I need a change of pace. I started off as an intern in marketing, just doing whatever jobs, came up with a research project, customer research project, where marketing research, where I had reached out to customers and kind of got their insight on, RP as a brand, who they are as a person. And so, having some research background, having some research in chemistry, having some very little research in kind of sports medicine.
Right.
But just being able to ask a clinical question, being able to ask, like figure out what it is, what kind of information you want from your subjects, and like putting that out there also really helped. But I think it's just being able to communicate. I'm always communicating, like no matter if it's on Slack, if it's on DMs, if it's on text message, any big rollout changes, I want to make sure that like I would rather over communicate to people who don't really need to know the information than under communicate and have somebody, who's on the team, a stakeholder, come up to me and be like, what's going on with this, thing? Can you tell me more about it?
That's so amazing, because I feel like it just brought up for me how often in life people are afraid to communicate,
Yeah.
and how many problems can really be avoided when you do communicate effectively.
Right.
It's a really important thing even to have on a job resume. You don't think about it, but like communicates effectively, probably pretty massive there. So that's terrific.
Well, thank you. Yeah, something that I had actually really thought about for a long time, because for a while the switch to start working on this non-medical kind of, non-traditional path after graduation was something I definitely struggled with for a number of years, because you spend so many years like feeling like I'm going to be a physician, I'm going to work in an office, I'm going to, work Monday through Friday, seeing, patients. And so when that didn't quite pan out, or when I kind of came to the end of it, I just didn't really, I felt pretty lost. Like, where is my place? Do I belong here? Are there things that I could learn, could have learned in my training and take to, the next, field I go into? And the answer is yes. Like, just because, so for those of you who are wondering, like, is there a potential for life outside of medicine? The answer is yes.
Right. Right. I mean, when you went to like start working in marketing for RP, obviously,
Yeah.
was it that did you have an interest in marketing, or were you just like, I need a break from this medicine thing, let me try this?
Yeah,
the latter.
Complete break from medicine. And so there were just like little odds and ends. It was actually, just a complete break from medicine, anything but medicine. Didn't even want to do sports medicine for a while.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
That's cool. So, caffeinated, it's all really about health and wellness. And it's so funny because, we talk about, lower body fat or this and that, or how to get ripped. But at the end of the day, I'm thinking, well, a lower BMI is a lower mortality, and it's all good for you. And you kind of get some nuggets of health in there with the, bicep stuff too. From, working as a doctor and also obviously sports science type stuff, RP, what are a few things that you think everyone can kind of do to make their health a little bit better, that kind of applies to almost everyone?
Man, so something that people can do just even, wow. I would say if you're thinking about like the general population, I probably would say one of two things. One, probably start decreasing the amount of takeout restaurant eating.
Yes. Wow.
And then two, find a way to make steps a daily, like get a step count, see where you're at, and see if you can. Yeah, see if you can This is a $30 one from Amazon, cheap one. See if you can just consistently keep an eye out on that, and work on that, because I mean those are the two kind of like low hanging fruit, at least in the clinic. When you see people, let's face it, the people who come to see the doctor more often than not are already at a place where we're trying to, kind of we're at the bottom. High blood pressure, diabetes, that's basically the two things, that come along that you end up seeing more often than not. And then all of the complications that stem from that.
It seems like they, for that kind of a person, they've also gotten to a place probably where they think, okay, I have to see a doctor now.
Yeah.
Where if they had come to that determination 30 pounds ago or all the takeout food ago, they might not have that same level of severity.
Yeah.
But when I hear you say two things, I hear less takeout. That kind of implies you're cooking yourself, which I think if you start off cooking yourself and just using ingredients, you're probably going to do better than if heaven knows what's in it.
Yeah.
And in terms of the step counter, I'm just hearing movement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I know, it's a lot easier said than done. When I was seeing, so my telemedicine private practice, it's all telemedicine. I don't see patients live anymore. Oftentimes, and for myself, I've been 190, 200 pounds at 4'11". Walking a block, I would get severe back pumps at that size. So thinking about the people who are, very high BMI, have not moved in a very long time. I can only imagine how difficult it is to even walk a block, but even just at rest, how much pain, people are in. I've often seen, I used to use I used to see people for, osteopathic manipulative treatment. And I used to kind of sell that as like an excuse to get people into the clinic so I could sort of make them feel better with a little bit of soft tissue, a little bit of massage, listening to whatever is on their mind, and then kind of trying to slowly work in like a lifestyle kind of, either lifestyle or, the medicine stuff as I am, kind of giving them, this like therapeutic touch kind of session. So
that's, slipping it in between the cracks, trying to slip some health things in there. Like maybe you want to drink some more water, or, vegetables are good. Medicine is such a crazy place today. I mean, obviously, in this country in particular, there's a very unique relationship between the people and the health insurance companies right now, which is not always, not always seeing eye to eye, maybe is a gentle way of putting it. What would you like to see change in the medical field? I know, right? What a loaded question. What do you think would do some good to change a little bit? Feel free to, if you want a tirade or whatever.
Oh, I mean, I would love more price transparency
gosh.
Particular and probably less insurance. I find that I know there may be some pros to having insurance, particularly if you are, you have, severe cancer, you have some sort of severe car accident, there's an emergency. I find that with both people who need medication or even healthy people, even something as simple as an X-ray. I remember trying to call the X-ray, facility, asking them for prices for a very healthy, college student, and they gave me a cash price if the patient did not have any insurance. Easy. It was $30. No problem. You ask them for a price with insurance. What type of insurance? Oh, I actually can't give you that. I actually can't give you an amount because they have to have the actual X-ray done, and then it has to go through insurance, and then it has to go through this long-winded chain of stuff before they can come up with the final price. So, I'm gonna be real. I recommended $30 doesn't seem like a terrible price. Honestly, if it were my family member, I would recommend pretend like you don't have insurance and just do the cash price.
Absolutely.
So it's probably the most frustrating thing. And I know that, thankfully I have the luxury of some time to do a little bit of stuff like that. But when you're seeing, 30, 40 patients in a day, you're not calling up the people to do price shopping or price comparison. Right. And even, I can only imagine what kind of answers, patients actually got. In those instances, I dropped the doctor card. I'm like, I am Dr. So-and-so, and this is, I have questions about pricing. So I find that, people...
It's a mixture of scary and sad that you're paying for this insurance one way or another vicariously or whoever a family member is, if it's a family plan or whatever. And it's okay, here's the move. Pretend you don't have it. It's going to go better than having it, you know?
And then I don't know. And then they were talking about your deductible. Did you meet your deductible? What's your copay? And it's just just pay the $30.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, as you mentioned with the step counter too, it's I feel like there are a lot of things in life today that are more expensive, and I get it, and people complain about it. I don't blame them, but $20, $30 to have a enormous health change. Yeah. This is I have the Garmin watch, the Instincts I like too, which are not crazy expensive, and between the calories and the time and everything else a watch does, the calendar, the alerts, heart rate if you're into that, VO2 max stuff, but even the step counter, that's the thing I probably looked at the most every day because it's I got to move a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I totally can see why you might want that to change in the medical field. Like, make people feel like they're glad they have this insurance, and make their lives easier.
Oh, yes. Just had another client patient. I mostly feel more like a coach, kind of a accountability coach.
Yeah.
She knew, so since it's the new calendar year, insurances decide to change their requirements. So Wegovy, under that insurance plan, is not covered for just weight maintenance. You have to have like documented cardiovascular disease. So I'm just like, oh, okay.
I want to talk about the GLP-1 agonist with you in a second. I know
Yeah.
you have a lot of experience with them, and you have a story which I want you to share with people in a moment. But it's just to tie these things together. Someone who I love very much, who also is going on these drugs, who the doctor says you need them, good stuff, and all this. They had said to this person, like, well, we can't. It was for the obesity, not for the diabetes, the Mounjaro versus Zepbound and whatnot. Yeah. And they're like, well, you can't have it yet. And why not? We want to prove it's like, well, you're not diabetic yet.
Yeah.
Well, like, why are we waiting? You see someone is on a path to not doing good.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we intervene before they're like really like, okay, so we'll just have this person do what they're doing for the next 6 months. They'll be a full-blown diabetic. And then we can worry about not just this drug, but insulin or heaven knows whatever else they might need. I mean...
Yeah, no, I agree. There was also anecdotally somebody, a physician who was asking about like making sure that they didn't mess up the paperwork for the prior auth, because if you don't use the original BMI, which I get, the insurance company will automatically take them off of it because they're like, oh, you've ended, you've reached your target, you can stop now. And I was like, I saw that earlier this week, and I was like, my head was like trying not to explode.
Remember back when we were morbidly obese and insurance would pay for things? That was great. Now we have to gain all that weight back so we can afford these drugs. It's a little sick. Yeah. But I digress. Please, you have talked before about your experiences with the GLP-1 agonists. Yeah. And if you would be kind enough to share a little of that, I think that's such an awesome thing to hear.
Yeah. Do you want me to start a little bit about background about my failed kind of weight loss attempt?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. Good content.
So I mean, I've always grown. I came out like 8.5 pound baby. I was a C-section baby. I was always, I always looked 20 pounds heavier than my peers. It was no big deal, but I noticed that very early on. And I also noticed that I had a very healthy appetite, as they used to call it back in the day. Would clean up my plate, like, life is good. Like, why can't you be more like Christle? Because she eats all of her food, right? So, went through, the standard diet like everybody else did, commercial programs. Would always end up getting to the end, losing some weight, and then I would get some combination of like feeling cold, feeling sick all the time. My, NEAT decreased, but I had no idea any of this stuff because this was like the early mid-90s. And then I would fail, gain all the weight back. It was not sustainable, and I just, for the life of me, could not figure it out. The last time I did a really severe diet was probably in 2011, 2012, where I had met a like bodybuilding coach and put me on a pretty low calorie diet for a year. Kind of, again, dieted myself into the ground. I was at least resistance training at this point. I was at least getting high amounts of protein, but it was still like, at best like 900 calories or so. Got down to 130, from 150, was cold all the time. My hair started to fall out. I remember starting med school, dieted down, doing, multiple cardio sessions, doing multiple lifting sessions, still looked really soft. But I was so hungry that I actually couldn't sleep at night. So like I would just toss and turn, the entire night, feeling like my stomach was sort of eating itself. But I was like, you know what? I have to have willpower. Like, this is what it takes to like be, and like, keep in mind, like, I did not look like a bodybuilder.
Right.
I just looked regular because at that point my muscle was just like my lifts were going into the tank. I was not recovering, but I didn't realize how important recovery was at the
Right.
time.
Yeah.
So, failed anatomy that summer. And so I was left decided to part ways with that bodybuilding coach. And so I was left with, this appetite that was out of control, like for months. So I was trying to struggle with that. And, did, kind of still liked training, thankfully. But like I put the dieting thing aside and just kind of got back up to 150, got myself back up to 4 square meals a day. That seemed similar in, macronutrient composition. And I kind of just put that kind of mindset aside because I didn't want to fail out of school. So, did a couple years later, I did try a couple of fat loss rounds closer to graduation, like after everything was all said and done. Still felt like I was struggling hunger-wise. I would put all of my meals together within a 4 to 6 hour period for the day so I could teach. Because my appetite was just out of control and like I couldn't focus at work. Failed a couple of medications throughout residency. One gave me hives. None of them really took my appetite.
Now you got 2 problems. You're hungry and you're...
And I have hives all over. It was so... Yeah,
Oh God.
Exactly. I was in the hospital and like looked down at my arm and like just welts all over the place. I was like, this is awful. But it wasn't until 2021 that my doctor had recommended Wegovy. And I actually said no, because one, it was the height of the COVID pandemic. And I was just like this frazzled kind of fellow, sports med fellow, kind of working in the COVID environment. And I was like, I don't have time for this. It's expensive. Insurance didn't cover it.
Yeah. I remember.
Yeah, and then also it was an injection. I didn't know if just for what the rest of the medications I failed were pills. So I was like, I don't even want to think about it.
Right.
It wasn't until January of like 2022 that I had, I saw how food focused bodybuilders were post contest, particularly Mike.
Right.
Then I really started to think about it. And kind of sat down and had kind of a real talk with him of, like, why are you, because there was a lot of ego to it. And he was just like, you could also just take the medication, see if the medication works, and you could be a more productive person. Like, why are you white knuckling,
right.
Through this? And like, it's going to affect your work. It's going to affect your relationships with people and myself, because you're just going to be irritable all the time, thinking about like having to just like grind through this, like, I'm not hungry, when in fact you are. And then really thinking about what happened, 10 years ago with the, in med school where I couldn't sleep because it was that bad. So I just finally decided to give it a try. And it really felt like, a light bulb sort of went off in my head. And I remember saying to Mike, wow, this is really what thin people must feel like. To be able to like, not like, I wasn't dieting. I was just sort of maintaining my weight. And even that was a very easy process. I could put the fork down. I could, have a couple of bites of, my meal. Like, we went out to a restaurant in San Diego, and I just remember I ate most of the steak. I ate some of the vegetables. Like, we shared an appetizer. I had like 2 sips of red wine. I remember not finishing the wine and like being okay with it. Mm-hmm. And just even having a couple of bites on the plate and just feeling full, and then being very weirded out by that whole experience. 'Cause like, that's not something that like I don't think, looking back, I really don't think there's any amount of like mindfulness. I don't think there's any amount of like chew, 30 times before you swallow. No amount of like take a sip of water before, after every bite to make sure like you stay full. Like it is just like, and it's completely different than like taking caffeine to stave off hunger. It is just a different feel. Like there's no, I wish I could, describe it better than like, it just is. It's a light bulb.
I feel like it's so interesting because when you're talking about your experience, because obviously you're always trying to, relate and understand. Like I have my baby girl's about 10 months old.
Yeah.
And 2 days prior to this, she didn't sleep, which means I didn't sleep.
Yeah.
And I know me, and my wife slept a little, but not so much either.
Yeah.
And I know me, and I know when I don't sleep enough, that's one of the big things that can mess your hunger up.
Right.
So I'm during the day, and I'm like, I know what my maintenance calories are, and this is not hunger. This is a craving, friend. So, have some water or do this, or if you need to eat a little more, that's cool. But you kind of learn about yourself a little bit. Yeah. Whereas today I'm rested. I don't have the same thing. But you learned about yourself in the sense that you're like, I'm eating maintenance calories. I'm still hungry.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
And it's like, well, that doesn't really make sense because you're not like, you weren't at a point where you were underweight where that would kind of make a little bit of sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah. So that kind of brings me to the next question. I find there are people, some of them I know personally, who are very resistant to the idea of taking these drugs. Either it's a form of cheating, or they're going to white knuckle it, or no, I can do it myself.
Yeah.
And I'm no doctor or scientist, but I do read a lot, and it seems like these things are pretty darn promising. What do you say to somebody who's really struggled with this for a while and is kind of like, I can do it type of thing,
I mean, if people insist, so here's the thing with working with people, I never try and change people's like minds because I find that if they're going to already come at me with, no, I can do this on my own. Word up. I have athletes, come up and be like, I'm going to do keto. And, they've already made up their mind. At that point, I just sort of, you work with them. It's like, okay, well, this is just us gathering information. Like, I'm here to support you. It may be tough. You may run into hunger. Let's give it a shot and see how it goes. And then at the very least, if it doesn't work out, at least we can start thinking about why it doesn't work and what we can do next time. Because if the person, I find that it's much easier for people to have buy-in if you are supportive of their goals. And it's really just all about getting information on what works for the person. So unless it's like, I'm going to start doing heroin or fentanyl today, right?
Yeah.
Like,
the cocaine diet.
even, a football player who decides they want to do a keto diet, like word up. We talk about pros and cons. I talk about, keep in mind about how your energy levels are doing. Keep in mind, how your lifts are doing. Usually I'll let, the athletic trainer, the strength and conditioning coaches know that they have decided to do this. Keep an eye on them as far as performance goes and then see where it goes. And, sure enough, usually a few weeks later, like I feel like crap, like I have no energy. It's like, yeah, maybe we should, how do you feel about adding some carbs back in? Might make you feel better.
The evil oatmeal that's killed no one per any study for the last 50 years. That's the problem, not literally that you're eating bacon all day or anything like that.
Oh, you mean that the amount of Uber Eats and Grubhub delivery that I'm actually kind of surprised by it because back in my day, that stuff was expensive. So getting delivery service, like Starbucks delivered to the training facility, like as a college athlete, it's awesome. But at the same time, I'm like, how much money do you guys have? Like, I still feel very like, I feel like such a boomer. I'm like, no, I can go to Starbucks and get my own coffee and avoid the $5, delivery fee. Yeah. And it's just like, So
we use Shipt a lot. because my wife and I are constantly, and we try to cook healthy and teach the kids how to
Yeah.
cook. And if we don't have an ingredient and we have both of them with us,
Yeah.
it's,
I get it.
they're both 3 and under.
Yeah.
So it's like, sometimes just like you'll play it. But I hear your point there. In terms of people, I'm so biased because I always try to, when I talk to people about diet, I always say to each their own, what works for you works for you.
Yeah.
But try not to subscribe to any absolutes because a lot of times the absolutes are there because it's really easy to sell you the XYZ diet. The calories in, calories out thermogenesis diet doesn't quite sound as sexy.
Yeah.
It's not as marketable.
Yeah.
And it's like now we have to make it like, well, if you only eat elk or you avoid fiber,
Right.
And it gets a little ridiculous, but I'm so biased because I did some of those diets for a bit. I fell into that trap.
Yeah.
And it was when I introduced carbs that my training went through the roof.
Yeah.
Timing the carbs. That's when I was able to lose all my weight. I much like you, was pretty darn heavy growing up.
Yeah.
I was teased, I was bullied, all that stuff. Then I made the really big mistake of starting to get muscular too.
Oh.
So then the slightly older kids in high school were like, let's kick his ass because he looks like, So so I went from being like chubby bully to like, now you're muscular, we're going to bully you.
Gosh.
But yeah, I mean, I like carbs. I'm like, listen, if your doctor tells you, I know there are people who can't tolerate carbs well and things like that. If your doctor tells you don't eat carbs, awesome. But otherwise, maybe try eating carbs. I think people also confuse water weight and glycogen and the scale going down with losing fat. It's like, now you're a deflated version of yourself. Congratulations.
Yeah. I spend, for people who I have more of an accountability coach, I think it's really important to talk to people about scale weight versus body recomposition, especially for people who are new to training. Talking to them about, you don't need necessarily this flat line. It looks like, and I even show them a screenshot of what my maintenance, looks like. There's, in the apps, you have like a very wide range, and it should, over time, the average should just, even out. But you have these peaks and valleys that go up and down, and, kind of giving those ahead of time when you are talking to people or working with people the first time, I think is really important, and continuing to kind of reiterate that. I also find that a lot of times, as far as, we were talking about communication earlier, a lot of times people need to be reminded, and that's totally okay. But I find that as a manager, people forget, people do stuff here and there, and you got to remind people every now and again, hey, we're going to do this. Hey, just remember, this is water weight. This is not like a real reflection of like what's going on body composition wise.
And that's the great thing about having a coach. Because I mean, even me in my position right now, I'd love to have a coach to talk to me. And I'm telling people how to do it. But sometimes it feels like someone giving you feedback and kind of looking out for you and stuff like that. It's awesome to have a coach, no matter where you're at. And that's why I think a lot of we talked about bodybuilding earlier too. They're using coaches. They're winning, Chris Bumstead or whoever, they still have coaches. They're just, there's a reason for it.
Yeah, it also takes the mental fatigue of like having to think about what my programming is going to look like, or what should I do if this is a goal of mine? How do I get there? Like, am I actually progressing? Like, what can I change to do better? Hand off the reins. Mike and I have a jiu-jitsu coach, Will Starks, and Josh Vogel. I'm like, hand off the reins, you help me, and I'm just going to show up, and whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do it. And like, it's nice to know that like now I can focus my mental efforts on other projects like RPU.
We talked a little bit earlier too about the idea of not having cognitive dissonance over things you do and you don't know. And if you're relatively new to jiu-jitsu and you don't feel like you're the expert of jiu-jitsu, it's a lot easier to have a coach too, because you're trusting of that coach.
Right. And even like when I was in med school, I scraped enough money to hire one of the RP coaches to help me with my powerlifting programming.
That's awesome.
Because I knew some stuff, and I could put a program together for myself, but like I'm in med school and I have other things to worry about. Like, I just want to show up and just do the work and
Right.
let the decisions, because I would sit there for hours hemming and hawing of like, what should my accessory exercise be? Like,
Yep.
oh my God, did I do too many reps or did I do too few reps? Like, no. Like, leave that to somebody else.
That's me making my next mesocycle as we speak, because I haven't been able to train for 3 weeks properly after my surgery, my eye surgery.
Yeah.
So I'm like, do I want to do the incline or the flat fly? And I'm like, I'll decide tomorrow because it's too stressful.
Yeah.
Too stressful.
Exactly.
I was one more question I wanted to ask you regarding the GLPs.
Yeah.
I know. But is there a person that you think maybe they're not right for, or someone who shouldn't take them?
I mean, anybody who has any, I feel like you should, if your decision, when you decide to take the medication, you should feel good about it. You should feel like, I know the pros and cons, I know the risks and benefits, and I find that I am okay with the potential for taking on some sort of risk because the benefit outweighs it. So I think people who are, a little bit on the fence about it, like I would not push like somebody doesn't have diabetes, doesn't have high blood pressure, doesn't have cardiovascular disease, just has obesity and is still on the fence about it. I don't know if I'd necessarily push it.
Right.
I'm not in the business of forcing that on somebody who's still questionable. But if you do have, high blood pressure, you do have cardiovascular disease, diabetes, like that's a whole separate conversation,
Right. It's like, it brings up such a really, I don't know, interesting question to me. And it's almost like, could see this like triggering some people a little bit. But as a doctor, do you ever have to say to yourself, like, this person's behavior is really, really hurting them? Like their behavior in the sense that, like, okay, yeah, well, I go to McDonald's every day. I don't know, something like that. And it's like, well, maybe you want to try not going to McDonald's first and see what happens. Or like, how do you approach someone who's like, I'm not even trying, without saying they're not even trying?
Yeah. I remember, so for somebody who's just like, I go to McDonald's, because usually they'll actually, oddly enough, they will tell me like, I'm doing everything I can. I eat very healthy. I have like, I had like, I'll ask them what their typical diet looks like. And they'll give me a very canned answer. And then I ask them, what did you eat? What was the last thing you ate before you walked in, before you talked to me? And, it's usually a combination of, I don't know where you're at. Are you, it's like, Wawa is a very,
I'm in New York. I know Wawa though.
And it's usually, one of the sandwiches. I love their sandwiches. It's usually a sandwich that's pretty high. Like, it's got bacon. It's got like the higher
Nitrate,
Italian
sodium.
meats.
Oh my!
But it's like got the higher fat, like pastrami, salami, higher fat stuff with mayonnaise in there and cheese in there. Or like a croissant bacon egg sandwich. And then I'm just, we have a real conversation about like, well, okay, you went to Wawa, like why, is it, a convenience thing? Is it I don't have time in the morning thing? And then we kind of break it down from there. And I kind of walk them back through, and then maybe give them a suggestion to consider that is like lower on the scale, because I get it. There is that sort of like kind of disconnect between what they want to do and what is actually going on. And so I try not to like come up to a place of like you're not even trying here,
Right.
because it just, it doesn't really help them. And I know, and they've already sort of, kind of gave me, this disconnect between what they would like to eat on a daily basis and what they actually ate is
Right.
a little bit skewed. So I try and just tease out kind of, making some small changes to think about, because I don't necessarily think they're ready at that point.
Right.
But at least it's less like if I ask them to maybe swap out, for turkey, maybe get less cheese, maybe get less mayo, maybe, I at least will have not offended them, and we can maybe somewhere meet in the middle.
I'm sure you can always, like, to your point, you can always make a better choice.
Yeah.
Might not be the best choice, and
Right.
you might not want to do it 7 days a week, but everyone's been in a position. I mean, to me, it's always family gatherings.
Yeah.
It's always like, and I don't mean like Christmas where I'm going to enjoy myself. I mean, it's going to be like,
Birthday.
exactly. And
Timmy's
it's like,
birthday.
exactly. Like, I'm like, what here is not going to totally derail my goals?
Right.
And I can totally appreciate that. Well, maybe it's not the best thing, but you can have some, whatever.
Oh yeah, and I remember I've pulled up, in the middle of a clinic, pulling up, some random like, Italian restaurant, and like we went through the menu together, because there are times where people have ended up getting diagnosed with diabetes, and had no idea like the things that they were eating and the lifestyle they were living was like leading to this. So being the first kind of point person to kind of talk to them about lifestyle is like, oh, hey, by the way, your blood sugar on average is like in the 300s. We should probably chat about that.
My wife and I were actually talking earlier about a skinny friend of ours who just kind of eats whatever they want. It's so skinny. And it's like, oh, they're so lucky. I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know about that, because it's kind of like, the car is on fire, but you can't see fire or smell smoke. So you just have to figure it out some other way, which is usually to your point. Yeah. You're diabetic, your sugar's 300 or something like that.
Yeah, and I've seen people who are skinny get diagnosed with diabetes. So
crazy.
It's insane. So you still have to, even if you are like in, aesthetic kind of shape of sorts, you still have to do the work. You still have to stay active. You still have to eat, relatively healthy most days of the week.
What's your feeling on the GLP agonists versus like bariatric surgery or gastric sleeve or something like that? Where do you see the drugs fitting in with those two things?
Oh, I mean, I think for one thing, it's a less invasive. I mean, it's a major surgery. It's not like, it's not like a thing that, it's not like, a surgery that you can just take some local anesthetic and do it in the office. I mean, there are serious complication that can come along with it. I think the drugs would be nice to have as a sort of part of the it's a long process to get somebody, approved for bariatric surgery.
Right.
It varies. I know that some people have to meet with like a nutritionist a couple times. They have to get a couple of like major tests done, plus or minus like maybe seeing food, like talking about like psychologists to talk about food stuff. Plus,
I don't know how reversible that is. Is that a big part of that?
Oh yeah, like if you can't, like you cut, you're cutting off part of somebody's stomach and then tossing it out, so it's irreversible. But it also a lot of times doesn't necessarily address the hunger aspect. Mm-hmm. Like it can, but I don't think it's in the same way as these medications. So one, I think it would actually benefit a lot of people if they gave this a shot before doing the surgery. But even for those after the surgery, they can still benefit from it in the sense of like, if their hunger is still, outwardly unchecked, this could be a great sort of adjunct to the surgery post-op.
Right. I've heard of people putting themselves in the hospital because they've eaten the same amount, even with the surgery or the sleeve. And it's like, now your stomach really, I mean, I guess it can expand to a point, but maybe not.
Right. You just don't want to, like, you just went through all of this to shrink that stomach, and now it's, So, I find that a lot of times the, like, accountability from coaches, I think could be done a little bit better. In the sense of like, I think there's a huge gap between kind of the online sort of fitness industry and the medical community. Right. And I know in insurance, logistics, malpractice, like all of that is like a lot of red tape. But I think there is something to be said about like having a coach who is monitoring, your weight weekly, checking in with you, making sure that the rate of weight loss isn't too high, making sure that you are actually taking periodic breaks from dieting, fat loss dieting, to raise the calories, get rid of that diet fatigue. So I find that like a lot of people sort of miss that when they're just treated in the medical community for weight loss.
The thing with the GLPs that obviously the coaching I think is so important with those things. The thing that makes me concerned is I feel like, people take these drugs, they're not as hungry.
Yep.
So they're still in some cases eating whatever they were eating, just less of it. They're losing weight, BMI is going down. That's awesome. That's still great. It does maybe bring up more nutritional deficiency possibly. We're not getting enough protein, and maybe there's not enough micronutrients in the food we are eating if we're making good choices. And my concern is, for whatever reason, we're talking about health insurance companies, side effects to drugs like you've had, even the availability of drugs, what we haven't really talked about. Then my concern is, okay, well, this has been amazing, but you haven't really built any new habits. What if the drug goes away one day? Generally when people regain weight, they regain more.
Right. Right.
How do you feel about those concerns, and what concerns do maybe you have? Or what kind of a better question is, what do you feel a client or someone you're coaching or is under your medical supervision should be, what practices should they be embodying with these drugs?
I think, if we had to go from a rank priority order list, I think protein and lifting is at the top.
Nice.
That's, yes, I would love for them to every meal should have ideally every meal should have, a large amount of protein, fiber, leafy green vegetable, or whatever vegetable color you want, rainbow, love it. You can't go wrong with it. I don't bother weighing those out because I'm not like a neurotic bodybuilder at this time.
You're just surrounded by us.
Sorry. Nobody got fat over vegetables. So I'm just,
I remember growing up having some of those Kraft singles on that broccoli. We did that in my house. I could have contributed to this a little
bit. Some sort of carbohydrate, but I think the protein part gets really missed when you think about what's available out there. It's so easy to get a fat and a carb. Much more difficult to get a lean protein. So I find that if you keep it simple, let's search for much lean protein as we can out there. And then resistance training. You don't have to be a bodybuilder. I'm looking for, 2 times a week. You could do it at home. You could do it at a gym. Planet Fitness is like $10 a month. I think is a totally reasonable. You can get a great workout there. I have worked out at a Planet Fitness. I have taken my client, patient, friend, colleague. We met at Planet Fitness and we caught a workout together, and it was awesome. So things can get done, a full body workout, and keeping it very easy. Something for upper body, something for lower body, 3 sets of 10. And it's wild when somebody is still new to that, just seeing how the newbie gains has been really really awesome to just, I know that they existed and I know people talk about body recomposition, but it's insane to actually see it and be a part of that, I guess.
I did a full body recomp not too long ago after training for many years, just because there were certain things I understood. One in particular, carb timing, that I wasn't making best use of because I was intermittent fasting or whatever. My best friend, I got him back in the gym now 2 times a week. Yay. He's kicking ass and he's loving it, and he's so happy because he's not hating the idea of the workouts.
Right.
And the other thing too is why would you want, so I understand if you're excited about training, you're new, but if you can get results out of 2 days a week, milk that as long as you can, unless you're insane like me who goes crazy when you're not in the gym.
Right.
And then when if you stall, then add more volume and whatnot. Right. But why not ride those gains, to your point?
Totally. And people you have kids, which add a whole new thing to the mix. And then some people have, some people still go to work a brick and mortar kind of job that they have to go to. They have to commute to a place. So I get it. I want people to feel empowered to get the biggest bang for their buck and not feel like I have to, sacrifice everything. Like, you're going to have to make lifestyle choices, but you don't have to identify as like a recreational athlete,
right.
To see anything.
So to your point, I mean, I think that's so important when people, you do not have to do one of the things I love about the RP app too is like full body workout.
Yeah.
Or 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, 6. And that's one of the things, because I was able to say to my friends too, look, you do this if this works for you. This is what I do. And, I'm not enhanced, so I can't train as much as those other guys, which,
right.
That's the biggest thing I think I'm jealous of. I'm like, I'm still recovering. And Dr. Mike's like, I'm doing arms for the 3rd time today. I'm like, damn it. With the GLPs, why do you think they're getting so much hate right now? And I know it's not everybody, because I think so many people are open to it, but it was so cool. You and I are on the gram, because even though I think we're about the same age, we both do what the kids do, so we're on the gram. And Dr. Mike actually posted something of those Wicked girls.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And they're both look very, very skinny, maybe even to the point of emaciated. You could say even, I don't want to say too skinny like I'm judging them, but someone could say maybe they don't look healthy, and I maybe would understand that point of view. And then they're tying it into the GLPs. Is that why these drugs are getting, or do people feel the wrong people are taking these drugs? Is that where that's coming from?
I feel like they are. I think that's where a lot of the backlash. But like the other thing is that I don't know these people. We don't, unless
I have no idea.
Right? Like
they could just be skinny people.
We could just be skinny. If they've already been naturally skinny, it would probably be a lot easier for a skinny person to continue to be skinny or like lose that weight. I would imagine their hunger signaling is probably, since they've been at that weight for a very long time, I would imagine their hunger signaling is a lot lower than somebody who is on the medication like myself. Right. But also, it's not my place to kind of make those judgments. But I do know that a lot of the general population kind of looks up to these celebrities. I will say that the celebrities, like, they're being hired for their ability to act, in front of a camera. They're not like, I guess I just also don't place any judgment on them for existing in their life. I try not to actually take much of anything from them other than, I saw Wicked and it was very entertaining. And that's really all I can ask for from these, actor and actress celebrities.
I think people also are making assumptions too. I know they took these 2 girls and they are skinny or whatever, and I think they're tying that into America isn't body positive. It's these girls are skinny, and it's like, well, wait a second. Maybe to your point, maybe they're skinny, and then should I be telling people whether or not they should be taking drugs? I feel the same. I mean, look at bodybuilding. Like Mike, you were saying earlier, the GLP1 agonists are part of it. I remember a video of Nick Shaw actually talking about how bodybuilders coming off competition, how helpful they were in regulating hunger, so they didn't go insane. Right. I'm not, as long as people are informed and they're adults, I'm obviously way against kids being exposed to the steroids and stuff like that. Because, having kids too, you get more paranoid about all that stuff. You're like, I don't want my kid watching this, but to each their own. And there's a lot of judgment, though. That's what I feel, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I find that social media makes it very easy to
it's the worst.
Kind of pass judgment. By the way, I'm 42, so
I'm coming up. We're close. I'm coming up on the big 40 this year.
Oh, yay!
So yeah.
Yay.
So
lots of Botox.
Exactly. I got to get rid of all of these.
Steroids accelerate, accelerate the aging process. So another con for the steroids.
I'm not going. If I haven't gone near them yet, I don't think now's the time. But that whole recovery thing is tempting. No. I'm a chicken. That's why. I'm just a chicken. The truth is, I'm a chicken. I learned. I was young. They're tempting. I read the side effects, and I was like, I better figure out another way to do this.
Yeah.
you know? But I
Exactly.
respect the hell out of those guys. They work their asses off.
You still have to do the work.
Oh my God.
I mean, people are genetically blessed. They do, your genetics do determine your, reaction, response to the drugs or the steroids or whatever. But you still have to do work. And also it's the same thing for the GLP-1s. You still have to put in the work.
Right.
You still have to figure out like a reasonably healthy diet. You still have to find a way to resistance train. You still have to find a way to get your steps in.
That was one of my favorite things Dr. Mike and I actually talked about when he was on the show was, I think a lot of people look at these bodybuilders and they're like, I could do that if I was on steroids. And I was like, well, maybe, but I don't want to like take away that they're also working their asses off. And they're probably sacrificing quite a bit, including their health, to do this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, you can make a different choice than someone and still respect, hey, this must take a lot to do.
Oh, yeah. It's, you still have to, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I respect the fact that like I see those guys working their asses off for it, and the amount of like training, the amount that goes into posing, but I'm also like somebody who pays attention to processes. I think that's part of my like,
doing everythingness,
manager, operations, primary care physician brain, kind of always paying attention to the process, like the outcomes or whatever, like not really like it's nice to get to the finish line, but in order to get to the finish line, you need to make sure your processes are in place. So
you'd be a good like marriage counselor, seeing the processes. Like he's thinking of it because he's looking at it this way, and you're thinking of it that way, and it's like we're not going to fight anymore.
Right.
This is great. One of the things that I noticed, like talking to my wife and talking to like other women in the field and stuff like that, and nutrition and fitness and all that stuff, is it's so cool to finally see women coming around really to strength training and muscle and weights. And like I always laugh because I feel like for at least half of my life, 3/4 of my life, people thought, women, this is a women thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I lift these weights, I'm going to look like that Ronnie Coleman guy. And it's like, dude.
yeah,
You know?
And yeah, no, exactly. I remember looking at the women's fitness magazines in the 80s and late 80s and 90s. The only time I ever saw like some semblance of a female lifting heavy was sort of if they were skinny, already at like a very skinny size, and then they did that to build muscle. So for the longest time, it was always if you're fat, lose the weight first, and then when you get to your goal weight, kind of work on building muscle. So got that wrong.
And was it that they didn't know body recomp was even a thing?
No.
Or
I didn't see it. I didn't realize how important the strength training aspect to it was, even at this like size, and preserving that kind of muscle mass in a calorie deficit. It wasn't until like probably one of my last diets with Weight Watchers, because they had the point system, and the more cardio you did, the more points you got.
Oh my God.
So like calories, right? So I would do as many, I would do like 90-minute like elliptical sessions 5 days a week or something like that. And then try and eat, I would eat all of those calories. And I just ended up looking really soft.
Yeah.
No real tone to anything, no shape to anything. And so I finally gave that up, but
I also, I feel like when I look at the women's macros, like for some of these cuts and stuff like that, especially petite women like my wife, I'm like, that's not enough food. Like you're gonna like, it's, we have a world where like we're not always cooking our own food, and that, some of these numbers are just so low. It's like, why don't you strength train or at least recomp first? Eat it maintenance, gain as much muscle as you can.
Yeah.
And granted, okay, maybe it's not an extra 1,000 calories a day, but those 300-400 calories a day, if you can gain some real muscle, you're going to enjoy that if you're making good choices.
Yeah. I almost find that that's also kind of one of those like surprises that I also learned a lot along the way. So I find that like I have a relatively decent amount of muscle that I have put on. My maintenance calories are probably somewhere around 1,600. At 4'11", 20% body, 20-25% body fat. I guess I was sort of expecting it, based off of what I saw off of social media. growing up and seeing the CrossFit era, like those girls were eating like 3,000 calories and like looked ripped and like had a bunch of muscle. And so I'm sitting here, I'm like doing how many sessions of jiu-jitsu a week?
Yeah.
I'm like strength training X amount of days. But like, I think it's also important to keep that in mind because I remember there was a backlash in the kind of fitness space about like, if you're eating, if you're eating less than, 2,000 calories a day, like as a woman, like that's wrong. And it's like, actually, some of us like, even with the extra muscle, you should add the muscle. But like, I guess I'd temper people's expectations in that, like, you're not going to be a 3,000 calorie kind of person.
No. And it's crazy because you're just, and that goes like, I guess, that goes to like the palatability of food and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you have to be just maybe a little more careful in terms of, or you don't have to be careful if you're okay with it, but I guess you can't have the dichotomy of both where, unfortunately bigger people or the CrossFit women that maybe have a ton of muscle or they're just bigger. Maybe they're just bigger women. They could eat more calories. Yeah.
And also genetics. Your, baseline metabolic rate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just not that great. I'm around 140 pounds. So I'm not like, I'm 4'11". I'm not like, I'm a short person, but I'm not like a petite,
right.
So sort of like womp, womp, womp. But it is what it is. Like
right.
You
have to feel good. You have to be happy. You have to be able to do, like, you seem to really love the jiu-jitsu thing, which is pretty awesome. And you're doing, I think it's cooler to put on the strength, honestly, anyway.
It has helped. It has helped me stay as injury free as you possibly can with jiu-jitsu. Training with full range of motion, loading up the joint at those stretched positions. It's really nice. Knock on wood. I know that you can't always protect yourself and avoid every injury, but man, it really does. It does feel very nice having that base strength coming into it. Yeah.
I've never done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to embarrass everyone in the dojo my first day. Just like Steven Seagal.
Oh no, he's so great.
Like I leave there like with two bloody faces, and I was a little cocky. No. What do you guys love so much about it? What do you think the thing is that makes it so awesome for you guys?
I think what makes it so awesome for me is I've wanted to do it for a very long time,
cool.
But I put it away because, being in medicine, I was always traveling. I had really weird hours. Like I didn't want to make time to show up to a class. Whereas, picking up powerlifting in med school, like I could show up to the gym whenever I wanted. There were way more gyms that were sort of close to me and I could just do it there. I could do it on my own time. And like, honestly, after a long day of like dealing with patients, like I actually just didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to be in the corner at my squat rack. Like nobody talk to me. This is like my time for silence.
Right. Yeah. It's peace.
Yes, it is.
Even in a busy gym where it's loud, you put your headphones on and you can focus a little bit. And I get some of my best thinking done at the gym between sets.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm writing a book right now, and I'm just like, oh, that's what I meant to, and I'm, like, sometimes it just gives you that tranquility.
No, for sure. So, and I think there's also just like this a little bit of aggression. There's something very kind of soothing to know that like even on my worst days, like I still learn something new. It's just a new challenge. Really.
I love it. And you and I are both pretty much close to the same age.
Yeah.
I know Dr. Mike is too. Like it's so important just to have things you can still learn in life and feel like you're forever being a student.
Yeah.
And it's exciting, It's so exciting. So here's the question that everyone really wants to know about. This is the one I've been leading up to.
Oh, boy.
So you, Dr. Mike, are both academics. Both of you guys are much smarter than me, so whatever. No, you guys are super academic, super smart. I love talking to him. I love talking to you. What do you guys disagree on? What are the arguments you guys have? Like two smart people, like what are one of the things that you guys disagree on? I don't mean like who walked the dog. I mean like
I would
sciencey
say
stuff.
Oh, I thought you meant sciencey stuff. Oh.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean.
Oh.
Yeah.
Man, I don't necessarily like, I think the closest thing in science that we like disagree on is I find that he is a lot more excited and like positive about the state of like GLP1s, the, AI technology.
Yeah.
I'm not, I try not to get too, like, I'm just not a very excitable, like, I'm not trying to automatically always be skeptical of things. I'm a lot slower to kind of come around to the fact, like, I like GLP-1s, but like, I think when you talk to him about it, he's like, this is amazing. This is the revolution. It's the, it's the next best thing. And it's just like, for me, it's like, yes, they're really great. They have some, risks and benefits. Like, I think let's talk about them. I know he goes over them, but like, I think his initial reaction is always like, this is amazing. This is going to transform the world. And I'm not that like emotional about.
I think I feel the same way that both of you do. Like, this AI thing is awesome, but like, I don't want the robots to take over. So like, are we, a little apprehensive, and also like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good answer.
I honestly can't remember the last time, at least with science stuff, that I'm like, it's not really coming, or I disagree with that. Cause I can't, that's
Still,
the biggest thing that
still pretty cool. So the AI thing, I know he loves the AI and all that stuff, and you're saying you're a little.
I mean, I do love it. The more I find that I've actually started to integrate it more and trying to like play around with it. Like, you can take pictures of your meals and upload it to ChatGPT. 4.0 does a pretty decent job of estimating your calories and macros, so it's interesting to try sort of on the run.
Do you know my wife told me this?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's never going to work. And she's like, why? I'm like, they're going to have no idea how much butter and oil are in those potatoes. I'm like, and people don't realize, like, you add that you do this when you're making the sauteing, and that's, you do that for, I don't know, let's say 1, 2, 3 or 4 seconds. That's like 100, 200 calories right there. If you got the $1,600 calories of maintenance a day, that's like,
Oh, yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't use it on a day-to-day basis. And I have used it to take pictures of like my pre-portioned meals, like, stuff that I cooked and weighed out. I wouldn't use it all the time, but it's also getting better. Like, if you continue to train it, it could do a pretty decent job.
Your client who went to Wawa did that. That's why she thought that sandwich was okay. She's like, I put it in GPT, and you could see like a little slice of salami,
right.
And where the backside of the sandwich was loaded. It was like angled. People deceive themselves. I would totally see people doing that.
Oh, for sure. But it's there has been a big shift because when 3.5 was out, there was a difference between 3.5 what they were estimating for the same picture.
Wow.
So 4.0 we did both of those pictures, one for 3.5 and one for 4.0, and it's gotten better. It's going to continue to get better.
I had never used ChatGPT until Dr. Mike and I spoke, and he told me that you could get references on it, and I just know nothing about it, and I've used it for a lot of references.
Yeah.
I've used it, and then I would jump from the page to the reference.
Yeah.
But in writing the book, especially, it's been great because I'm just a little naive when it comes to technology.
Yeah, I used it more and more often because I found, for me, trying to do my own research, I would end up in like this weird PubMed K-hole leading to nowhere. Like 8 hours would go by and I'd read all these other articles that had nothing to do with the original because I just didn't have the focus. So
well, the thing too is like you ask it a question, and then you have another question, so then it gives you a whole other answer, and you have to hit the little arrow to go into the new question. But what about the other 90% of my first question?
I know.
And if you're not really focused,
you can still
fall down the rabbit hole.
Exactly.
You're watching YouTube for, all night. You didn't go to sleep.
Yeah.
All right. It's the GOAT lightning round.
Oh. Ooh.
The GOAT lightning round is when you tell me which the GOAT, the greatest of all time.
Oh.
That's
man.
good.
Okay.
For you. Okay. So this is a fun thing that people get judged highly for. Not it was fun. It's fun. What is your favorite album to listen to when training? What's the GOAT for you?
Ooh, I'd say
About to age yourself, just like me.
I am for lifting weights. The
For
last
me, I'm like Depeche Mode.
I was about to say Metallica.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, for whom the bell tolls, the album where that
For Whom the Bell Tolls. I feel like For Whom the Bell Tolls was on Ride the Lightning.
Yeah, there you go.
Playing that when I was really young.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Okay, that's a good answer. Metallica. Wow. Okay. What is your favorite exercise? Strength training does not have to induce the most hypertrophy or anything like that. What's your favorite to do?
I probably say pull-ups, because unassisted pull-ups, because that was like the one thing I could never do with the Presidential Fitness Challenge, and now I can finally do them. So it took 40 years to get there.
That is incredibly cool. That's a really, really good answer, because it's like it has a meaning to you.
Yeah.
It took you a long time to do it, which is cool. What is the best thing you have learned working in the health and fitness fields that's kind of stuck with you as a guiding light? Like in terms of something that you remember that you learned that maybe just kind of continues to shape your practice today?
I would say ultimately at the end of the day, it is the decision to take action. It lies with the client or the patient, and that's okay. And I say that because it's very easy to get very emotionally attached to what a client or a patient does. And I think in order to protect yourself from any emotional burnout, I think you have to let it go and be okay with that. So if they decide that after our conversation, they're going to go do X, Y, and Z that you don't recommend, it's okay. Like, because at the end of the day, your success and your ability to be a great physician, a coach, is not dependent on what it is they decide to do ultimately.
Right on. That's so true. You can't, that's not you're at the end of the day, you're doing everything you can do, and someone has to decide to change.
Yeah.
So they have to they're either putting the Twinkie down or picking it up, or whatever they're doing. All right. Speaking of Twinkies, now I'm going to ask you what your favorite cheat meal or junk food is, but I have to preface this.
Okay.
Dr. Mike and I had a very thorough conversation on Taco Bell. And it got a little heated because he asked me what the difference between a chalupa and a gordita was, which I still can't say. And he thought I didn't know, but I thought I did know. And he was mad at me because I know the Taco Bell menu, the Mexican pizzas and all that. So we kind of found common ground on Taco Bell. What's your favorite thing to eat when you don't give a Funko Pop?
Man, does it have to be like one thing?
Whatever.
So, I will say, like, it's hard to say for me, at least, because I like to have experiences. My palate has definitely a little bougie.
That's pretty cool.
But I do like me a good solid burger and fries.
Yeah.
But you got to pair it with this past weekend I had a Negroni with instead of bourbon I had Hennessy added to it.
Pretty cool.
So I don't drink that often, maybe once every 6 months or so, but usually a Negroni, an old fashioned, some bourbon based drink is my jam.
My wife and I are finally going to have a date night tomorrow night. We're going to go to a French restaurant, and I love escargot, which I find delicious.
Really?
And there will be at least a Moscow Mule or two at that table.
Nice.
So, yeah, we don't drink. I don't drink ever, but I enjoy it sometimes too. Yeah. It's a good answer though. Burger and fry from where though? What's the place?
Man, it's I think this is more of a nostalgia thing than anything, but In-N-Out.
Wow.
It's just not too heavy. If you get the fries well done, they're pretty damn good. And then they
Never
come
have.
with the fresh lettuce, the fresh tomato. So I find that, it's a California thing.
I've
I'm
never
pretty sure.
I've never had an In-N-Out burger.
People have opinions about it. People have strong opinions for and against it. So being from California, like, it's always got a good place in my heart.
That is very, very, very cool. Now, the last question I'm going to ask you,
Okay.
are you knowledgeable in Star Wars at all?
I am probably the most terrible person when it comes to recalling movies, but I remember when Star Wars first came out in the 80s, and my brother scared me with the mask, the stormtroopers.
The Stormtrooper? Yeah. I went to vacation in Florida, like with a camp, and I spent all of my money my parents gave me the first day, like for food for a week, on a replica Chewbacca mask, and I had no money for the rest of the trip.
Oh,
So,
no.
Speaking of good decision making,
Yes.
So if I was to ask you if Han Solo or Greedo shot first, you would not know the answer.
Ooh, no.
Pew, pew, pew.
No, I remember when somebody got frozen. Like, I remember the first three
Yes.
movies. I remember the
Yes.
first three movies, and then after that, and anything involving what's her face?
Princess
Was
Leia.
it Natalie Portman. I watched none of
Natalie
those.
Portman.
I watched none of those. I was not interested. Not interested in going back.
There's going to be some. This episode's about to get controversial
Oh,
because the people our age don't like those movies, and the kids like made them their Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
But as far as the Han Solo thing, my wife actually told me, she's like, if you don't do the laundry, I will freeze you in carbonate like Han Solo. And I'm like, I believed her.
Oh, man.
I'm like, I'm doing that laundry.
Yeah.
Dr. Crystal, you are a pleasure.
Thank
I
you
can
so
see
much for
why
having me.
Dr. Mike loves hanging out with you so much. You guys are awesome. This has been absolutely wonderful to speak with you on these things. Please come back and speak to me again.
Of
That would be
course.
incredible. And you can check out Dr. Crystal on the RP Strength, RP Periodization channel, all that good stuff. And I am really, really looking forward to seeing what you do with RP University in 2025.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here.